Hello everyone, I am Tessellating Hexagons, and I feel like I need to drop something for dramatic effect. So, yesterday, amongst others, was the national final for Iceland to determine their representative for Eurovision 2019, and I don't really have much of a segue here. The winning candidate was fan favourite, strangely enough, a group by the name of Hatari, which consists of Clemens Nikolausson Hannigan, Mathias Tryggvi Haraldsson, and Einar Hraffen Stefansson, if I'm reading those names correctly, and if not, I'm sorry, Icelandic is hard. But yes, so the group is called Hatari, which is Swahili for dangerous, apparently, and yes, they definitely are, and their song is called Hatrið Mun Sigra, which is Icelandic throughout. It means hatred will win, hate will prevail, that kind of thing. Music and lyrics by, well, the group themselves, Clemens, Matthias, and Einar, and I don't really know how to introduce this song other than I knew it was a favourite and I checked it out beforehand, and let's just get started with the review! So as I've kind of implied so far, they certainly do leave one hell of a first impression, don't they? God damn! The truth is, there were only 2 songs from the Icelandic selection this year that I listened to, and yes, this was one of them, because I'd been told it was both one of the favourites and standout weird, and you know I'm a sucker for weird stuff. And yes, I agree with both of those statements. I can absolutely see how this has and will continue to polarize opinions across the continent and beyond, but at the same time, I'm actually glad that there's been this much support for this song, if only so that they get a fair shot on the Eurovision stage. As I said about Hungary last year, just to name one example, Eurovision is for everyone, no exceptions, every type of music, no exceptions, and that means embracing this sort of music with open arms as well, or at the very least, not rejecting it and pushing it away on sight. Now, whether you like it or not, well, let's dig a little deeper and see what Iceland's doing right this year. Well, before anything else, let's face facts. This song is deeply infamous already and will probably only get an even more potent reputation for itself as the season goes on, which will end up preceding it for basically the rest of this year's Eurovision season, and probably for the rest of time, to be perfectly honest, in a manner surprisingly comparable to Netta last year, except this will probably last even longer than Netta's famousness, infamy, just because of how talk-aboutable it is. For better or for worse, the news outlets are going to absolutely be all over Hatari and their aesthetic and their song and just basically everything about their act. People are going to know about them before they hit the stage. To be fair, that kind of approach is not entirely undeserved, because they pack a punch in basically every conceivable department, especially with this song in particular, and not just as an act, like with this song especially, in terms of visuals, in terms of music, in terms of vocals, and the first and lasting impressions that they leave when they perform it. They really do have everything going for them in order to get people's attention, and at Eurovision that can kind of only ever be a good thing if you think about it. What helps that even further is that they absolutely nail the performances live, like throughout Söngvakeppnin and probably beyond, from how to stage them to, crucially, the actual vocal component themselves. Since this song relies a fair bit on screamy, distorted vocals, the whole effect would absolutely fall flat if something went wrong with it live. But, much like with RVS's screamy metal vocals last year, they absolutely 100% can deliver them live on stage, which means that their live performance in Tel Aviv will absolutely turn just as many heads as it did at the national final and in the run-up to the national final. And finally, just take a close look at the lyrics and the sentiment behind them. It's a story we've more or less never heard at Eurovision before. In a contest full of love, love, peace, peace, we've got a song ostensibly saying exactly the opposite. And as a depressed, nihilistic millennial, I, for one, resonate with it wholeheartedly. It may be full of despair at a glance, but bizarrely, I find the whole approach to be really refreshing. It's an uncomfortable truth in a world built on capitalizing on comforting lies, and I respect Hatari for having the balls to break the mold with this one. The thing is, there is a lot that goes on with this song that some people just aren't going to like, and that is valid too. For one, Although I take an odd amount of comfort in the darkness of the song's general everything, some people will be put off by the lyrics and the message that speaks of life being an endless hangover and it's all void of meaning, daily life is a treacherous pipe dream. Some people just want to come out and have fun at Eurovision, and this kind of nihilistic realness might come on a little bit strong for some people, I recognise that. Similarly, a huge component of the group's presence in the first place is their visual style, with the spikes, the bondage gear, and occasionally the blood. Some people might describe their aesthetic as being horrifying, and honestly, you'd be perfectly within your rights to do so. While that is what they're going for, they go for it knowing that it won't be to everyone's tastes. In much the same way, the majority of the song, though not the refrain, which will most likely make it into the recap, is performed with growly, gravelly, distorted vocals, which, again, can come across as anywhere between hideous and nightmare-inducing to some listeners. But since that forms a huge part of the song's overall identity, you'll be hearing it a lot, so if you're not a fan, that can make this song a tough 3 minutes to get through, especially since the lyrics are kind of the key to most of the song's momentum. So the instrumentation can sound like it's going on and on a little bit if you choose to ignore the lyrics entirely. I would criticize the going on-ness of the instrumentation, but that only becomes a problem if you're voluntarily ignoring the vocals. So that's not the song's fault, that's how you're choosing to interpret the song. It'll be no different from complaining that the song doesn't have lyrics at all because they're there but you're just not listening to them. If that makes any sense at all? Still, if it's any consolation to any of this, the refrain is much more market-friendly. And since that's what's going to appear in the recap, most likely, at least you won't be hearing the verses more than is strictly necessary. In summary, if you don't like it, that's okay, you're allowed to not like it. But in exchange, please accept that there are some of us out here who do like it, okay? Just throwing that in here because the people who like it, and the people who don't, from what I've seen, kind of refuse to shut up about how much they don't like it and then go on massive rants to justify how much they're not shutting up about not liking it, and okay, we get it. Move on and just listen to something that makes you happy then. And this isn't a dig at anyone in particular, this is just, I've seen this kind of sentiment cropping up a lot, okay? Just let it go. Right, now it's kind of time for the ratings out of 10, isn't it? And so, despite what you might expect, I did actually spend quite a while mulling over my scores here, and I kind of can't think of a reason to justify not giving the song a personal score of 10 out of 10. Yes, I admit it, it's not the sort of thing that I would ordinarily listen to, and I'm not hyper crazy about the stylistic choice of the verse vocals in general, but despite that, I find myself enjoying the complete package that is this song. I appreciate the choice of message, I really love the instrumental personally, and I find the vocals in general, both the verses and the refrain, to be optimal for the way they work alongside that instrumental to create a performance that is genuinely tough to forget about whether you want to or not. Like, it's surprisingly memorable, more so than I expected. Maybe that's how they won me over, I don't know. And I kind of find myself in a similarly difficult situation with the technical score. The thing is, again, I can't think of a reason not to give it that 10 out of 10, and I'm aware that that does technically make it the first perfect 20 out of 20 of the season from me, but that does not mean that I think it's the perfect song. Like, you're allowed to not like it, and that's valid. There are aspects to it that some people will inevitably not like. That's fine, that's valid. I don't want to belittle people who have those opinions. My reasoning here, though, is that for everything this song sets out to achieve, it absolutely nails 100%. It wants a dark atmosphere, it wants infamy, it kind of wants to shock people, it wants to stand out with Hatari's distinct identity, and it does all of that flawlessly. And true, the song isn't completely accessible to absolutely everyone, but it doesn't drag that out, as it were. People who will like it will discover so very quickly. People who won't like it won't be led on into thinking that they might. It'll be clear from the get-go. They're not trying to deceive anyone. So, no, this song is not perfect. I will own that. But there's nothing else it can do to make it be the best version of itself as it currently stands. It doesn't have universal appeal, but it doesn't try to, and it doesn't pretend to. I can't criticize the song on those grounds, and if anything, I respect Hatari for the way they're executing this. Now though, does this mean that Iceland's moving in the right direction at Eurovision? Well, it's tricky to say. My answer will only ever be yes here, but the question is, how much yes? Well, I'm going to go with that middle green arrow, since on one hand, it's the same national final format as always, so in a sense, nothing's really changed, and Hatari's presence in it at all is kind of a random fluke that could have happened at any point in time under this exact system. Then again, it is a decently clever national final system that churned out a dated ballad last year and something that's bound to whip up a storm of infamy this year, more or less at random. And as they say, there's no such thing as bad publicity. And as we've seen, from Lorraine to Netta to Salvador, just to name 3 examples off the top of my head, if you can build up hype of any kind before the contest, that does usually tend to translate into points on the night. Just saying. But does that mean Hatari will reach the final? Well, to reiterate what I was just saying, it's not an easy prediction to make by any stretch of the imagination. I'm inclined to think that they will, because they're going to leave an impression when they hit the stage, and people are really going to know about them both beforehand and definitely after they've seen them. People are going to react to it, people are going to remember them. And as it stands, there's a lot of positive buzz about the song both within Iceland and abroad, which does seem rather promising. But then again, we really can truly never know until the votes come in. On the night, they might miss the mark entirely, and the majority of the voting public might not like their aesthetic or their style, and just dismiss them on the spot for being so aggressively strange and shock jockey-ish. After all, for all I've said about pre-contest hype, do also consider Belgium in recent years in general, especially last year, or Azerbaijan in 2017 with the horse's head, as is the case with basically every song that's been chosen thus far. Absolutely nothing is carved in stone. So I really do look forward to seeing how this one plays out. It could go very well for them, it could blow up in their faces, and there really is no way to tell at the moment. So I turn to you, lovely people. What do you think about this song? As ever, let me know in the comments, let me know in the poll in the iCard of this video. Do you like this song? Do you hate this song? Will Hatred win? Haha. Do you feel neutral somehow? Let me know, I genuinely want to hear how you feel about it. But in the meantime, to Hatari, to the people of Iceland who are bold enough to send this to Eurovision, I wish you the very best of luck, and maybe we'll return to that pattern of Iceland coming second once every 10 years. Who knows? See you in May.